The phone rang at 4:17 in the morning, and I knew before I picked it up that something was wrong. Phones don't ring at that hour for good reasons. Never have, never will. I was already awake. At 68, I don't sleep through the night anymore. My back complains, my prostate complains, the wind through the gutters complains, and I lie there listening to all of it until the sky starts going gray. That morning, I'd been sitting in the kitchen with a cup of decaf, looking at the snow piling up against the window. Vermont, in late February, the kind of cold that makes the house tick and groan like it's trying to tell you something. The number on the screen wasn't one I recognized, just a string of digits, area code I didn't know. I let it ring 3 times before I answered. I don't know why. Maybe I was bracing myself. Hello? There was a pause, a long one. I could hear breathing on the other end, and behind that, the sound of wind. Real wind, the kind that comes off open country. Then a voice said, "Granddad, I want you to understand something. I have one son. Had one son. His name was Wesley, and he died on a logging road outside Burlington 6 years ago this coming April. They told me the truck slid on black ice and went into the ravine, and that was that. Closed casket. Wesley never married, never had children. Not that I knew of. Not that anyone knew of. Not that anyone knew of. So when this voice on the phone said, 'Granddad,' I didn't say anything for a long moment. I just held the phone and watched the snow come down. 'Who is this?' I finally said. My voice came out rougher than I meant it to. 'My name is Cooper. I'm Wesley's son. I know you don't know me. I know this sounds crazy. But I need help. Please. They're going to find me.' I sat down. I hadn't realized I was standing. 'Son,' I said. And the word caught in my throat because it was the same word I used to call Wesley. 'I think you've got the wrong number. Your name is Henrik Aldworth. You live in Stowe. Your wife's name was Margaret. She died of a stroke in October of 2014. Your son was Wesley James Aldworth. He drove a green Ford F-250, and he had a scar on his left eyebrow from when he fell off a horse when he was 9. I have a picture. I have his watch. I have the letter he wrote to my mother before he died.' I couldn't get any air. My chest felt like somebody had wrapped a belt around it and was tightening it 1 notch at a time. 'Where are you?' I said. 'I'm at a payphone. I think it's the last one in this whole damn state. I had to walk 8 miles to get to it. I can't go back where I was. There are people looking for me, Granddad. I know how this sounds. I know you've never heard of me, but I'm Wesley's son, and my mom is dead, and I have nowhere else to go.' Before I tell you what I said next, I want to ask you something. I want to know where you're listening from, and whether your part of the world is warm tonight or cold, because I've thought about this 1,000 times in the years since, and I'm not sure I would do it the same way today. I'm not sure any of us would. What I said was, 'Tell me where the payphone is. I'm coming to get you.' He gave me an intersection. It was about 40 minutes north of me, up near the Canadian border, in a little town I'd driven through maybe twice in my whole life. I told him to stay where he was and not to talk to anybody. I told him I drove an old maroon Buick, and I'd be there as fast as the roads would let me. I hung up. I sat in the kitchen for about 30 seconds, just staring at the phone like it might do something else strange. And then I got up and got dressed. I want you to picture me because it matters. I'm not a tough man. I never was. I'm a retired high school principal. I taught American history for 22 years before they moved me into administration. I've got bad knees and a hearing aid in my right ear, and the only weapon in my house was an old shotgun my father gave me, which I hadn't fired since 1987. I put it in the trunk of the Buick anyway. I don't know why. It just felt like something a person ought to do. The drive up took longer than I wanted it to. The plows hadn't been through, and there were stretches of road where the snow was up to my hubcaps, and I was steering by faith. I had time to think on the way. Too much time, probably. I thought about Wesley. About the last time I'd seen him, which was Christmas before he died. He'd come up from wherever he'd been living that year, somewhere in Pennsylvania, and he'd seemed quiet. Quieter than usual. He'd sat at the kitchen table with me after dinner, and we talked about the Patriots, and then we talked about nothing. And then he'd said, "Dad, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to know I love you. I want you to know I tried." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. He just stared at his coffee for a long time. I should have pushed him. I should have grabbed him by the shoulders and made him tell me what was going on. But I didn't. I just sat there and let it pass, the way a coward lets things pass, and 4 months later, he was dead in a ravine outside Burlington. I never heard about a girlfriend. I never heard about a child. The state troopers said the crash had been an accident, plain and simple, and I believed them because believing them was easier than the alternative. I pulled into the intersection at 6 minutes after 5. The sky was just starting to turn the color of an old bruise. There was a gas station on one corner with the lights off, and across from it a little wooden shelter that I guess used to be a bus stop, with a payphone bolted to the side of it. There was a kid sitting under the shelter. I want to be careful how I describe him, because what I felt when I saw him was something I don't have good words for. He looked maybe 16, maybe 17. He was wearing a thin canvas jacket that wasn't anywhere near warm enough for the weather, and a pair of work boots that were 2 sizes too big. And his hair was the color Wesley's had been when Wesley was that age. Dark blonde, almost brown. The kind that goes gold in the summer. He stood up when he saw the Buick, and when he turned his face toward me, I had to grip the steering wheel because my hands were shaking. He had Margaret's eyes. My wife's eyes, pale gray, set deep with that little upward tilt at the outside corner. I had married a woman with those eyes, and I had buried her with those eyes, and I had not seen them in 11 years. And now they were looking at me through a windshield in the middle of nowhere. I rolled down the window. I couldn't speak. He said, "Granddad," I said, "get in the car, son. Get in the car right now." He climbed in. He smelled like wood smoke and sweat and something else. Something I couldn't place at first, and then I realized it was fear. Pure animal fear. The smell of a person who has been running for a long time. I cranked the heat. He held his hands over the vent, and they were red and chapped, and one of them had a bandage wrapped around 2 of the fingers, soaked through with old blood. "What happened to your hand?" I said. "Later," he said. "Please, can we just go? Can you just drive?" I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just pointed the car south, and I drove. For about 10 minutes, neither of us said anything. He just sat there with his eyes closed and his hands over the heat vent, and I kept stealing glances at him because I couldn't help it. Every time I looked, I saw something else. Wesley's jawline. Margaret's eyes. The little crooked place at the bridge of his nose that had been on Wesley's face since he was a baby, from where he'd slept, funny in the hospital bassinet. This was my grandson. I knew it the way you know the weather is going to change. Some things you don't need proof for. "What's your last name?" I asked him. "Brennan," he said. My mother's name was Caitlin Brennan. The name didn't mean anything to me, but I asked him, "Did your mother know my son?" He opened his eyes and looked at me. "She loved him," he said. "She told me he was the only good thing that ever happened to her. She told me he didn't know about me. She told me she never wanted him to know because of what her family was." What was her family? He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Granddad, I need you to listen to me, and I need you to believe me. And I know that's a lot to ask from somebody who just met me, but the people who killed my dad are looking for me right now, and they will kill me if they find me. And I think they'll kill you too if they find out you helped me." I kept driving. The wipers pushed snow off the windshield. The heater rattled. I felt very calm, in a way I hadn't felt in a long time, maybe ever. "Tell me everything," I said. "Start at the beginning." He started at the beginning. His mother, Caitlin, had grown up in a town outside Scranton, Pennsylvania. Her father ran a trucking outfit, the kind of trucking outfit where the trucks come back empty sometimes and full sometimes, and nobody asked questions about what was in them. She'd met Wesley when he was working a road job out there, the summer after he left college. They'd been together about a year. She'd gotten pregnant, and when she told her father about the baby, her father had told her she had two choices. She could end the pregnancy, or she could disappear with the kid and never speak to Wesley again, and never let Wesley know the baby existed. She'd chosen the second one. She'd taken Cooper and gone. She'd lived in a little town in upstate New York for 15 years, working as a waitress under a name that wasn't hers, raising the boy alone. Wesley had figured it out. I don't know how, and Cooper didn't know either. But somewhere along the way, Wesley had figured it out. He'd found her. He'd gotten in touch. He'd started sending money. He'd told her he wanted to meet his son. That was the spring he died. My mom said it wasn't an accident, Cooper said. He was looking out the window, watching the trees go by. She said her father had people. She said her father told her after Wesley died that what happened was a warning, and that if she ever told anybody, the same thing would happen to me. She made me promise. She made me promise I wouldn't ever try to find you. What changed? I said. My mom died 3 weeks ago, he said. His voice didn't break, but it went very flat. Pancreatic cancer. It was fast. She'd known for months, and she didn't tell me until the end. And the last thing she said to me, before she stopped being able to talk, was that I had to go to you. She said you were the only family I had left. She said she should have told my dad about me sooner. She said she was sorry. I had to pull over. I pulled into the parking lot of the closed diner, and I put the car in park, and I put my forehead on the steering wheel. And I didn't cry, exactly, but something in my chest came loose that had been tight for 6 years. My boy hadn't been killed by black ice. My boy had been killed because he wanted to know his son. When I lifted my head, Cooper was looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Worry, maybe. Or something more careful than that. Granddad, he said, I shouldn't have come. I should have figured out something else. I shouldn't have brought this to your door. Where else were you going to go? I said. He didn't answer. How did you find me? I asked. My mom left me a box, he said. Letters. Pictures. Your phone number was in one of the letters my dad sent her. She'd kept everything. She told me there was a box, where to look for it, what was in it. She said when I was ready, I could decide for myself. And the people looking for you. Why now? Your mother just died. Because of the funeral, he said. My grandfather came to the funeral. My mom's father. I didn't know he was going to be there. He'd never been in my life. He told me he was going to take me back to Pennsylvania. He said I belonged with family now. And something in the way he said it made me run. I left that night. I've been moving for 2 weeks. I had a little money my mom left me. It's almost gone. I sat there with my hands on the wheel. The snow was easing up. The sky was getting lighter, and I felt the whole shape of my old man's life rearrange itself, the way a room looks different when the sun hits it from a new angle. All right, I said. All right, son, we're going home. I'll figure out what to do next. I pulled back onto the road. I'd like to tell you that the next few days were peaceful, that we sat by the fire and traded stories and got to know each other slowly, the way new family is supposed to. That isn't what happened. What happened was I took him home and I fed him. He was hungrier than any kid I'd ever seen, and he ate 3 eggs and 4 pieces of toast and most of a pound of bacon, and he barely talked while he was eating. Then I put him in Wesley's old room, which I hadn't changed since Wesley was 18. There were still high school baseball trophies on the dresser. I closed the door and let him sleep. He slept for 14 hours. While he slept, I sat in the kitchen and I thought. I thought about a man named Marcus Brennan, who I had now learned was the patriarch of a Pennsylvania trucking concern with rumored ties to organized crime. I thought about my son, dead in a ravine. I thought about my grandson, sleeping in my house with a bandaged hand and the smell of fear still on his clothes. I thought about what I was going to do. I am not, as I said, a tough man. I have never been violent. I have never owned a gun outside of that one shotgun, and I have never drawn it on a human being. But I want to tell you something that I have come to believe in the time since all of this happened. There is a thing that happens to a man. Sometimes when he has lost too much, there comes a point where the fear of losing more just burns itself out. Where you've already paid so much that the cost of paying a little more doesn't scare you anymore. I had lost my wife. I had lost my son. And now I had been sitting in a kitchen for 6 years, thinking I had nothing left to lose, and the universe had reached down and put a 16-year-old boy on my doorstep and said, Here is one more thing you could lose. Try not to. I made a phone call. I had a former student, a kid I'd taught American history to back in 1991. His name was Donald Pikeworth. He was now a federal prosecutor in the Northern District of New York. I had written him a recommendation letter for law school. I had been to his wedding. I had not spoken to him in 8 years. He picked up on the third ring. Mr. Aldworth, he said. He still called me that. They all still called me that. My old students. They never could get used to calling me Henrik. Donald, I said, I need a favor, and I need you to listen all the way through before you say anything. I told him what Cooper had told me. I told him about Wesley. I told him my suspicions about the Brennan family. I told him I had a 16-year-old boy in my house who I believe was a witness to and a target of an ongoing criminal enterprise. When I was finished, Donald was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Mr. Aldworth, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to bring 2 people I trust. We're going to take a statement from your grandson. And then we're going to figure out what protection looks like. Don't take him anywhere. Don't tell anyone he's there. Lock your doors. I can be in Stowe by tomorrow afternoon. All right, I said. And Mr. Aldworth, he said, I'm sorry about your son. I didn't know. Nobody knew, I said. That was the point. I hung up. Cooper woke up in the early evening. I made him a stew. We sat at the kitchen table, and I asked him about his life, and he told me about his mother, who had taught him to read before he was 4, and who had read aloud to him every night until he was 13. He told me about a dog he'd had named Rufus, who had died last winter. He told me about a girl in his algebra class he had liked but had never spoken to. He told me he was good at math. He wanted to be an engineer. He had wanted to go to Cornell before all of this happened. You can still go to Cornell, I said. He looked at me like I was speaking a language he didn't recognize. I mean it, I said. Whatever happens with all the rest of this, whatever we do next. You still going to college. You still going to be an engineer. I have some money put away. Your grandmother's money. I never knew what I was saving it for. I think I was saving it for you. He didn't say anything. He just looked at his stew. After a while, he said, Why are you doing this? Doing what? This. All of this. You don't even know me. I show up at your door at 5 in the morning and tell you a story that sounds insane and you just believe it. You just take me in. You just call your lawyer friend. Why? I thought about how to answer that. I said, Because you have my wife's eyes. And because you came here. And because if I had been any kind of father at all, I would have known your dad was scared that last Christmas, and I would have asked him what was wrong. I didn't. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. He nodded. He looked at his stew some more. I don't really remember my dad, he said quietly. I have one picture. My mom kept it on her dresser. I used to look at it when I was little, but I never met him. I don't know what his voice sounded like. He sounded like me, I said. A little higher. He laughed more than I did. He couldn't carry a tune to save his life. He loved old westerns. He loved his mother. He was a good man. He didn't always know it, but he was a good man. Cooper was crying then, quietly, without making any noise about it. I reached across the table and put my hand on his wrist, and we sat there like that for a long time, and the stew got cold. That night, I slept on the couch with my father's shotgun across my knees. I didn't actually expect anyone to come. The Brennans, if they were even real, had no way to know where Cooper was. He'd been on the road for 2 weeks, switching vehicles, paying cash, sleeping in shelters. He'd been careful. He'd told me so. But I sat on the couch anyway, and I watched the door. Around 2 in the morning, I saw headlights pull into the end of my driveway and stop. They sat there for maybe 30 seconds. Then they backed out and disappeared. It might have been a wrong turn. It might have been somebody lost. It might have been nothing at all. I sat there until sunrise. Donald arrived at 3 in the afternoon the next day. He had 2 people with him, a woman named Sarah Holcomb, who was apparently FBI, and a quiet man whose name I didn't catch, and who never took off his jacket, and who I am pretty sure was carrying a sidearm under it. They sat with Cooper at my kitchen table for almost 4 hours. They asked him questions. They wrote things down. Cooper showed them the contents of the box his mother had left him. There were letters from Wesley, 16 of them, that I had never known existed. There were pictures. There was a note in Caitlin Brennan's handwriting, dated 3 weeks before her death, that said, "Cooper, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone, and you have decided to find your father's people. Tell them everything. Tell them about Marcus. Tell them about Eddie Doran in the warehouse on Route 6. Tell them about Wesley. Don't be afraid anymore. I'm sorry I made you afraid for so long." I read that note over Donald's shoulder, and I thought, that is the bravest thing a dying woman ever wrote. That is somebody trying to set her child free with the last of her strength. Sarah Holcomb asked Cooper if he would be willing to testify. Cooper looked at me. I looked at him. "It's your call, son," I said. "Whatever you decide, I'll back you up." He said yes. That was the beginning of a very long process. I'm not going to walk you through all of it because most of it was paperwork and lawyers and depositions, and that's not what you came here for. What I'll tell you is the shape of it. The Brennans were real. The trucking company was real. The connection to a larger organization based out of Philadelphia was real. The federal government had been trying to build a case against them for 9 years, and they had never been able to get a witness. They had never been able to get anybody who was willing to talk. They had a witness now. Cooper testified in front of a grand jury in May. By that time, he was officially in the Federal Witness Protection Program, which is a strange thing to navigate when you are the only family the witness has, and you are in your late 60s and your knees hurt. They moved us. Both of us. They gave us new names and a new house in a state I'm not going to tell you. I sold the place in Stowe through an intermediary. I left behind almost everything. My books. Margaret's china. The trophies on Wesley's dresser. I kept one picture of Wesley, and one picture of Margaret, and one picture of the 3 of us at Cooper's age, at the lake, the summer Wesley turned 17. I kept the shotgun. I kept the watch Wesley had been wearing when he died, which the state troopers had given back to me in a plastic bag. Cooper finished high school under a different name. He did very well. He got into a state university that wasn't Cornell, but was, his counselor said, just as good for what he wanted to study. He started his freshman year last August. The trial took place in November. Cooper testified for 2 days. I sat in the back of the courtroom and watched him, and I watched the men he was testifying against. And one of them, an older man with white hair and a face like a piece of weathered leather, looked across the courtroom at me one time, just once, and I made myself meet his eyes and not look away. He was Marcus Brennan. He was the man who had ordered my son's death. He went to prison for the rest of his natural life. So did 4 other men. The trucking company was dismantled. The warehouse on Route 6 was raided, and what they found in it I will let you read about on your own time, because I don't have the stomach to repeat it. Cooper turned 18 in January. He's a sophomore in college now. He calls me every Sunday night. He is studying mechanical engineering, and he has a girlfriend whose name I won't tell you because that's not my story to share. I want to tell you about the night before he left for college. We were sitting on the back porch of the house they'd given us. It was August. The crickets were going. He had a beer, which I'd let him have, because I figured at that point he had earned the right to a beer with his grandfather. He said, "Granddad, can I ask you something?" "You can ask me anything." That morning. When I called you. From the payphone. Why did you come? I thought about it. Because you said the right word, I said. What word? Granddad. He looked at me. I know that sounds simple, I said. But if you'd called me anything else, I might have hung up. I might have thought it was a scam. There's 1,000 scams these days, kid. People calling old men, trying to get money. But you said Granddad, and there was something in your voice when you said it. It sounded like somebody who'd been wanting to say that word for a long time. And I knew. I don't know how, but I knew. He nodded. And the other thing, I said, I think I knew, somewhere in the part of me that doesn't say things out loud, that there had been something wrong with how Wesley died. I never could prove it. I never even let myself think it for very long. But I knew. I think your dad knew too those last months. I think he was scared. I think he was trying to figure out how to bring you and your mother into the open, and somebody figured out he was trying. I have spent 6 years not letting myself think about that. And then you called, and it was like somebody finally told me a thing I had already known. We sat there for a while. He said, I miss her, my mom. I know you do. I miss him too, even though I never knew him. Is that weird? To miss somebody you never met? No, I said. That's not weird at all. I want to say one more thing before I let you go. I'm 68 years old. I have been a father, and a husband, and a teacher, and a widower, and now, in what I suppose is the last chapter of all this, I have been a grandfather. And the thing I want to tell you, the thing I want you to take away from this story, is that you do not get as many chances as you think you do. I had 4 months between the last Christmas with Wesley and the day they pulled his truck out of the ravine. 4 months. In those 4 months, I called him twice, and one of those times I left a message, and he didn't call back. I didn't push. I didn't ask him what was wrong. I told myself he was a grown man, and he had his own life, and it wasn't my business. It was my business. Do everything that happens to your children is your business, until the day you die. I wish somebody had told me that when I was 40. If you have a son, call him tonight. Don't wait until tomorrow. If you have a father, call him tonight. If you suspect that someone you love is in trouble, ask them. Ask them flat out. The worst thing they can do is lie to you, and at least then you'll know they're lying, and you can keep asking. Don't let 6 years go by. Don't let 4 months go by. Don't let 4 hours go by if you can help it. The phone rang at 4:17 in the morning, and I almost didn't answer it because I was tired, and I was old, and I was used to bad news. And if I hadn't answered it, my grandson would be dead. He would have walked back into the snow, and he would have frozen. Or worse, the men looking for him would have found him before sunrise, and I would have spent the rest of my life sitting in the same kitchen, drinking the same decaf, looking out at the same snow, and never knowing what I had missed. I think about that almost every day. Pick up the phone, open the door, go and get them, whoever they are, wherever they are. Don't tell yourself it can wait. It can't wait. It never could. I sit out on this porch most evenings now, in a state I'm not allowed to name, and I think about how close I came to never picking up that phone. I was tired. I was old. I had a cup of decaf cooling on the kitchen table, and the snow was coming down, and my whole body was telling me to let it ring. If I had listened to my body, Cooper would be dead, and I would still be sitting in Stowe, believing my son had died on a patch of black ice. I've come to believe that almost everything that goes wrong in a man's life goes wrong because he was too tired or too proud or too scared to ask the next question. That last Christmas with Wesley, I saw something in his face. I felt it. And I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself he was a grown man. I let 4 months of silence stand between us, and a man named Marcus Brennan filled that silence with a death warrant. That is cause and effect. That is the math of it. My son did not die because of black ice. He died because nobody who loved him pressed him hard enough to tell the truth, and that includes me. I won't make that mistake again. Not with Cooper. Not with anybody. What I have learned, sitting here is that decency is not a feeling. It is a thing you do, usually when you are inconvenienced. It is answering the phone at 4 in the morning. It is putting an old shotgun in the trunk of an old Buick and driving north on roads that haven't been plowed because a stranger said the right word to you. It is calling a former student you haven't spoken to in 8 years and asking him to risk his career on something he can't yet verify. None of that is heroic. All of it is just the slow, stubborn work of refusing to look away. Wisdom, the kind it's worth having, is mostly the wisdom of paying attention. Caitlin Brennan paid attention for 16 years and kept her boy alive. She raised a kid who could read before he was 4 and who is going to be an engineer. And she did all of that while running from her own father. That is wisdom. That is also courage, which I have come to think might be the same thing seen from a different angle. If you take anything from what I have told you, take this. The people in your life are not going to send you a clear signal when they need you. They are going to send you a small one, and you are going to be tired, and the easy thing will be to let it go. Don't let it go. Ask the second question. Drive the long road. Open the door, even when it scares you, especially when it scares you. The cost of doing it is almost always smaller than the cost of finding out, 6 years later, what you missed. That is the only lesson I have. It cost me my son to learn it.